I was sleeping in my car when I found it. 2 weeks after my ex-husband David threw me out of the house with nothing. And I mean nothing. No money, no plan, no one to call. I was 34 years old, and I was living in a 2004 Honda Civic. I had a box of my grandmother's old things on the back seat. Photos, letters, keepsakes. I was looking through it one night, trying to find something that would remind me of better times. That's when I found the envelope. Inside was an old bank card, a savings account my grandmother Rose had opened for me when I was born, a savings account I'd completely forgotten about. I had $47,000 in it. But that money wasn't the real gift. What came with it changed everything. This is my story. My name is Maya. I met David when I was 22. He was confident, he was established, he had money. He told me I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. He made me feel special. For 12 years, I believed David loved me. I gave David everything. I supported David's business. I managed our home. I made David the center of my life. When David decided he wanted something, I made it happen. When David needed me, I was there, always. I thought that's what love looked like. I thought that's what marriage meant. My grandmother Rose used to watch us together. She never said much, but I'd catch her looking at me with this expression, like she was worried, like she knew something I didn't. I didn't ask her what she saw. I was too busy being in love with the idea of being loved. It started with small things. David said I wasn't smart enough for his business dinners. David said I didn't dress the right way. David said I was embarrassing him. David said I was holding him back. Then it became bigger. David told me he'd been unfaithful, multiple times. David said he didn't think I was attractive anymore. David said he'd only stayed married this long because he needed someone to manage his household. I tried to fight for the marriage. I went to therapy. I tried to change. I tried to be what David wanted. But you can't fix someone who doesn't think they're broken. One day, I came home early from work. I was thinking maybe we could talk. Maybe we could salvage something. David was in the living room with his attorney. There were papers on the table. "I'm done," David said. "I want a divorce, and I want you out. Today. I've already had our accounts transferred. I've already filed the paperwork. You have nothing." I actually laughed. I thought David was joking. David wasn't joking. "You have 1 hour to pack a bag and get out," David said. "Everything in this house is mine. The furniture, the car, everything. If you need money, call your family." I packed a bag in 30 minutes. I walked out with clothes, my grandmother's box of keepsakes, and my phone. That was 2 weeks before I found the card. The first week after David threw me out, I stayed in a hotel using my credit card. I thought maybe David would change his mind. I thought maybe this was temporary. By the second week, my credit card was declined. I'd maxed it out. I drove to my best friend Tanya's house at 2 a.m. I was sleeping in my car in her driveway. Tanya wanted me to come inside, but I didn't want to burden Tanya. Tanya had her own family to take care of. That first night in the car, I sat there thinking about how I'd gotten here. 12 years with David. 12 years of giving him everything. And now I had nothing. No apartment, no money, no prospects, no one who could help me. I had a job, but it didn't pay enough to get first and last month's rent on an apartment. I had some savings from before David, but not much, not enough. I spent 2 weeks sleeping in that car. 2 weeks of crying until I ran out of tears. 2 weeks of wondering if this was my life now, if I was going to be homeless, if I'd ever recover from this. I applied for roommate situations. Everyone wanted first month's rent up front. Everyone wanted to see bank statements. Everyone wanted proof I could pay. I couldn't prove anything. I had nothing. On the 14th night in the car, I was sitting in the parking lot of a 24-hour Walmart. I was going through my grandmother's box because it was the only thing that made me feel less alone. That's when I felt it. A hard envelope at the bottom of the box. I pulled out the envelope and opened it. Inside was an old bank card and a letter. The letter was from my grandmother Rose, written when I was born. She wrote, "My dear Maya, I'm opening this savings account for you today because I want you to know something. You are never meant to depend on anyone for your survival. Not a man, not a family, not anyone. I'm putting money in this account for you because I want you to always know that you have options, that you have choices, that you are never trapped." I sat there in that car, holding that letter, and I started to cry. I looked at the card, the account number. I didn't even know how to check the balance, but I drove to the nearest bank. It was closed. I waited until morning. The teller looked at the account, and her eyes went wide. "Your account balance is $47,382.16, she said. I thought I was dreaming. I thought I was hallucinating from lack of sleep and stress. I asked her to say it again. $47,382.16. My grandmother Rose had deposited money in this account since the day I was born, every single year. Birthday money, Christmas bonuses, retirement contributions. For 34 years, my grandmother had been building this safety net for me, and I had completely forgotten about it. But more than that, I'd let myself believe that I needed David. I'd let myself think I was nothing without him. I'd let myself become dependent on a man who saw me as a convenience. My grandmother Rose had known better. My grandmother Rose had always known I was strong enough to stand on my own. I didn't immediately go spend the money. I sat there for an hour reading my grandmother's letter over and over. She wrote about her own journey, how she'd married young, how her first husband had left her with nothing, how she'd rebuilt her life completely alone, how she'd learned that the only person she could truly depend on was herself. She wrote, "I don't want this life for you, baby. I want you to know from the start that you are enough, that you are strong, that you can take care of yourself. This money isn't about getting rich. It's about freedom. It's about knowing that no one can trap you, no one can make you stay where you don't want to be." I understood in that moment that my grandmother Rose hadn't just given me money, she'd given me permission. Permission to leave, permission to fail, permission to be independent, permission to become myself without waiting for a man to validate my existence. David had taken my home. David had taken my security. David had taken 12 years. But David couldn't take this. This was mine. This had always been mine. And for the first time since David threw me out, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a woman with choices. I felt like someone my grandmother had always believed in, even before I believed in myself. I didn't make any rash decisions. I got a hotel room that night. A real room, with a shower, with a bed, with privacy. I cried in that shower for an hour. The next morning, I called a therapist. I needed to understand why I'd made myself so small for so long, why I'd given David so much power over me, why I'd forgotten that I had options. My therapist helped me see that I'd been raised to believe that my value came from what I could do for someone else. I'd been taught that being a good woman meant being useful, being available, being dependent on a man's approval. But my grandmother Rose had tried to teach me something different. I spent a week planning, not reacting, not panicking, planning. I got my own apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I got my own furniture, modest pieces that I chose because I liked them, not because someone told me they were appropriate. I moved into that apartment on a Saturday morning. I put my few belongings on the floor. I sat in the middle of the empty living room and I let myself feel everything. The pain, the grief, the anger, the gratitude. Then I got up. I got a job with better pay. I got health insurance. I got my own phone plan. I started rebuilding my life, not for anyone else, but for me. And it was slow, but it was real, and it was mine. Money alone doesn't heal you, but security does something powerful. It gives you space to actually process your trauma. For the first time in 12 years, I wasn't in survival mode. I could actually think about my life beyond the next bill, the next crisis, the next thing David might destroy. I went back to school, something I'd always wanted to do, but David said was a waste of time. I reconnected with my friends, real friends, friends who'd been there even when David told me I shouldn't spend time with them. I started taking care of myself, real self-care, not because I was trying to be attractive for anyone, but because I deserved to feel good in my own skin. I started therapy, real, consistent therapy. I worked through my patterns. I learned why I had accepted David's cruelty. I learned why I'd made myself smaller to make room for someone else's largeness. I learned that my grandmother Rose's gift wasn't just money. It was a reminder that I had always had the power to choose. I just hadn't known it yet. Slowly, I didn't think about David anymore. David wasn't the villain of my story. David was just a chapter that had ended, and I was the one writing what came next. A year after I found my grandmother's card, I was having lunch with Tanya. Real lunch, not me falling apart on her shoulder while she tried to hold me together. Tanya asked me if I regretted marrying David. I thought about it honestly. I said, no, because David taught me something I needed to learn. David taught me who I am when everything is taken away. David taught me that I can survive. David taught me that my worth doesn't come from being useful to someone else. Tanya said, your grandmother already knew that. Yeah, I said, my grandmother already knew that. What I learned is that strength isn't about not falling. Strength is about getting back up. Strength is about looking at your devastation and choosing to rebuild it into something beautiful. Strength is about 2 weeks in a car teaching you that you can survive anything. Strength is about finding a card and remembering that you were never actually powerless. You just forgot. I'm 36 now. I own my apartment. I'm finishing my degree. I have a job I actually like. I have real relationships with people who see me and value me. And I think about my grandmother Rose all the time. I think about her handing me 55 years of love in the form of a bank account. I think about her believing in me before I believed in myself. My grandmother Rose taught me the most important lesson. You are never meant to depend on anyone for your survival. You are never meant to make yourself small to fit in someone else's life. You are never trapped because you always have the power to choose. Sometimes I sit in my apartment and I remember what it felt like to be sleeping in that car. I remember the desperation, the hopelessness, the feeling that my life was over. But it wasn't over. It was just beginning. I have a photo of my grandmother Rose on my nightstand. I look at it every morning, and every morning I'm grateful. Grateful that she believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Grateful that she gave me something money could never buy, the knowledge that I was strong enough to stand alone. I'm not angry at David anymore. I don't even think about David much. But I'm grateful to David too, in a way, because David forced me to become the woman my grandmother always knew I could be. The money helped, but the real gift was the letter. The real gift was knowing that someone, even when I was too young to understand, had been building my freedom from the start. My grandmother Rose taught me that love isn't about making yourself smaller. Love is about making yourself stronger. Love is about giving someone else the tools to survive without you. That's the legacy I want to pass on. That's the story I want my daughters to hear, if I ever have them, that their worth isn't in what they do for someone else, that their strength was there from the beginning, that they are enough exactly as they are. This isn't a story about getting money and having my problem solved. Money was just the tool. The real story is about remembering who I am when everything is stripped away. This is a story about a grandmother's faith in her granddaughter, a faith so deep, so real, that she spent 55 years building it in the form of a bank card. This is a story about discovering that the people we love can change our lives, not just through what they do for us, but through what they believe about us. My ex-husband threw me out, but my grandmother had already prepared me for anything. My grandmother had already given me the tools to survive. My grandmother had already told me, without words, through actions, that I was never meant to be dependent on anyone. I was always meant to be free. And now, every single day, I live that freedom. Every choice I make is mine. Every dream I chase is for me. Every person I let into my life is there because I choose them, not because I need them. That's the gift my grandmother gave me, not just money, freedom. My name is Maya. This is my story of rock bottom, redemption, and remembering who I was always meant to be. And my grandmother Rose, she's still with me. In every decision I make, in every moment I choose myself, in every time I remember that I am strong enough to stand alone. Thank you, Grandma. This life is for you.